First of all, I just want to thank everybody for allowing us to speak today. We're a little bit different than a lot of people that are going to be speaking over the next 2 days because this is really personal to myself and both Rene as well. And you'll see up on the screen it says "Tell to Win." And you probably think, what in the world does that mean? Well, I've been a safety advocate for 7 years on the national level, and one thing I've learned is that you got to tell your story to win, to get people to change, to think differently. And that's what we hope that we'll be able to add to this equation to make sure that this never happens again. I work, this is a picture of me and Aaron Brockovich, and we work together. So the day that I found out about San Bruno, you could imagine what I was thinking in my mind. I couldn't believe it. What most people don't know is that at 1701 Earl Avenue, which was the site of the explosion, is my childhood best friend's home. And we were friends since we were 3 years old. And so I was really in denial the first night. Like I didn't even know that it was her house. I just knew it was San Bruno, and I was waiting for someone to call me back. And no one called, so I kind of went along with that no news is good news kind of thing. Like maybe they're just really worried and have a lot going on and they can't call me back yet. And so it was the next morning when I got the call that it was actually their house, and that Joe, their son, was in the hospital, and we didn't know if he was going to make it, with 60-degree burn, third-degree burns on 60% of his body, and that they couldn't find his girlfriend, Jessica. So I jumped in my car. I live in Hollywood, and I drove to San Bruno, and I made a lot of phone calls on the way there to friends that I know in advocacy, and told them, you're not going to believe this, but PG&E blew up my best friend's house. Can you believe that? And I arrived in San Bruno that night to just utter chaos and confusion, and just 7 years of working with catastrophically injured families. It was a lot different for it to be someone that I really knew. And difficult is not even the word. I mean, I've been public speaking for 20 years, and this is probably the hardest for me to do today, because not only was Kathy my best friend, but now I've met a whole community of people that I'm connected to that have been affected, and meeting Rene Morales changed my life again, and it's changed a lot over the years. I never thought one incident could change my life all over again. But when you meet a mom who's lost their child to negligence, to something that could have been prevented, it really touches you. And I'm going to go through a few photos. I'm also a professional photographer, and so I took as many photos throughout the last year plus that I could. They were very difficult to take. This is on September 11th, just a few days afterwards, and this is through the fence to look at where the pipe had exploded. And this is, give you an idea, about 15 to 20 feet from the explosion is where Jessica and Joe were sitting at the time that it happened, watching a football game. And here's a couple more slides of 1701 Earl, and this is Kathy Gomez digging through the rubble in her house. We were hoping to find something, and we actually didn't find anything salvageable at the time. This is some of the first responders that had come back on the 11th to help them dig through the rubble, and it's quite a moving experience. It was like being in a movie to see this land just leveled. It was just unbelievable. Here's a shot of the trees that survived just feet from the explosion, and as you can see, it's just horrific what happened that day. Here's some additional photos of the pipe, and you can see there's already water sitting in the hole, so it kind of gives you an idea that there was a lot of moisture going on around the pipe. And another photo of the site there as well. You know, these people that have been affected, they're real stories about real people, and I made a list of the catastrophically injured families, and I wish I could mention every family who's been affected, because really whether it's a death or severe burns or your house burnt to the ground. It's kind of hard to separate people. It affected everybody tremendously, and none of their lives are ever going to be the same again. And, we wanted to take this opportunity to tell their stories and to tell what happened that day so that we can ensure this doesn't happen again. And being involved in safety advocacy, one thing I know, it's really important to have the science, but for some reason that doesn't really move people to change, not even Congress. It sounds kind of crazy, like what do you mean? People can stand up here and tell statistics and tell what needs to be done, but until real people like Rene Morales step up at a time that nobody could ever imagine that a mom could do and tell their daughter's story and not let people forget that these are real people with real stories whose lives were changed forever. And that's why we decided to start the Gas Pipe Safety Foundation, to help organizations that already exist, like the Pipeline Safety Trust, tell real stories about real people so nobody forgets and so that we can get the NTSB recommendations implemented. And that's our mission. That's the bottom line. It's our job to tell the stories of San Bruno over and over and over until we get the changes that NTSB has recommended in place. Again, I thank you guys for giving us the opportunity, and Renee's going to come up here and tell her story, and I'm sure you guys can all imagine that it's barely been a year, and like I said, I've worked with a lot of parents who've lost their kids in sports, and it doesn't get any easier as time goes on to work with parents who've lost their children. And I'll tell you, Rene Morales is a special person. It's unfortunate that this tragedy occurred, but you guys are all really lucky to have somebody who just a year after losing her daughter has the courage to get up here and stand in front of all of you and tell her daughter's story. So without further ado, Rene.
Hi, good morning. As you know, I am Rene Morales, and I am the mother of Jessica Morales. Jessica was one of those 8 victims that died in the pipeline explosion that night. And you can imagine how desperate I was at that moment to find out after the explosion that it happened in the very area that Jessica was going to visit that night. She was going over there for an evening of fun, to be with her boyfriend, to enjoy a game, and simple young kids enjoying the day. When I found out that the explosion was in the area, I was frantic. I wanted answers. I ran all over the neighborhood of San Bruno looking for my daughter. I followed Joe. I found out later on that Joe had gone to the hospital. I made every attempt to make contact with Joe. Unfortunately, he was severely injured, and at that moment, I was even more desperate to find out where my daughter was. I didn't find out until the next day, noontime, that my daughter was found in the neighborhood. She had made it out of the explosion and ran frantically. She had ran to a neighbor's backyard, and she was there, and they found her. She was not alive. Jessica was only 20. We had just celebrated her birthday. She was just beginning the next phase of her life, her adult life. Jessica was attending Academy of Arts. She was a full-time student. She worked part-time. She was pursuing her lifelong dream as a fashion designer and journalist. Jessica was very creative. She knew who she was, and she knew what she wanted. She had a very unique style. She was very loving to everyone. With the biggest heart, she made everyone feel welcome. She was fun and bright and intelligent. And she was determined for success. Jessica was a devoted daughter to me, to her sister, her brothers, her father. She was a young mother to my young Isaiah, my little Rebecca. She was a buddy and a pest to her older brother, Junior. She was a nag to her dad and her grandmother, but she was my best friend. And I will forever be empty, and I will always long to have her with me. I will miss those days that we had coffee together and we could just be ourselves. This tragedy, we know, didn't have to happen. It could have been prevented. The fire went on for 90 minutes, and they could not shut it off. I am trying my best, and as executive director of the GPS Foundation, I will do everything I can to ensure that no other families will have to suffer and endure what I have endured, what I continue to endure, and what we can do together to change the future. I want to know more, and I want to do more for all the benefit of everyone in this room and everyone out there. Thank you for this time. Thank you for everything. Have a good day.